Hi. Today we're going to talk about God is. Would somebody open up Mark 12:30?
Say that again.
12:30. Mark. It's in Jesus' words, so if you have a red Bible, it'll probably be red. You there? It's okay if you're not, because I can read it. Mark 12:30. Go ahead.
Oh, and you said 30, is that accurate?
Yeah.
You should love the eternal, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second great commandment is this: love others in the same way you love yourself. There are no commandments more important than these.
Okay. A similar statement is said in Deuteronomy and in Exodus, only it adds with all your strength. So we are to love God with all of our hearts, with all of our souls, with all of our minds, and with all of our strengths. Strength. Now, when one stops to consider how this can be done and what's our path here, there's some things that might come up automatically, like we might feel this is impossible. How can I have a job and be totally focused on God? How can I, it's just, I don't do that. So guilt and shame and a bunch of other things might come up. But I just want to invite us to look at it from a different vantage point. The Bible defines God in First John 4:8 and 1 John 4:16 with only one word. And I bet you don't even need to look it up. What is one word that describes God?
Forgiving.
Okay.
Almighty.
Okay.
Just.
Okay.
Go Dan. Dan mans up.
There we go. Yep. All of those were excellent. But those are very, very, like I said, there's two places that it actually says it specifically, and not only that, it says it all through the whole word. So, if God is love, let's take a look. The word love in that sentence is agape, and it is God's deep love. It's not like sexual love or brotherly love. It's a presence of loving above what we can do in the flesh. It's an inclusive love, and it's not dependent on how we feel at all. But it is dependent instead on who He is. And I stole this stuff from James Rafferty, so I'm going to give him credit. And he stated he gave this picture, and I loved it. Would you turn with me to 1 Corinthians 13? And while you're looking, if God is love, then let's read this together as if we were reading about God, putting God's name in there instead of the way the verse is written. And it's just so you can check on it later, and I'll just go ahead and read what I got here. It says, love is patient and kind, but I'm going to translate that. God is love, so God is patient. God is kind. God does not envy. He doesn't boast. He's not proud. He's not rude. And he's not self-seeking. He's not easily angered. He doesn't keep any record of wrongs. God does not delight in evil, but rejoices in truth. He always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. God never fails. Have you ever heard it quite like that before? It just sort of laid me out. It was like, I'm not afraid at all anymore. Took all of the shoulda, woulda, coulda straight out of there, and it's like walking up to meet who God is. Now what makes that even more cool is, oh, I forgot the bottom part. He will never pass away. Faith, love, and faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. So the greatest of all of us is God. The King James says, God suffers long and is kind. And I'm still reading the same thing. God is not envy. He does not parade himself. He's not puffed up. He doesn't behave rudely, and he doesn't seek his own. He's not provoked. He doesn't think evil. He doesn't rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. He bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things, and he never fails. So if we use that same ruler of putting God in the description of love, and we go to the Galatians 5:16, it dawned on me that God is also the Spirit. So if we pull it out of what it's supposed to happen in us, but the fruit of God is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, kindness, and self-control. That's what he is. That's why we get that stuff in us. Because if we follow what the Bible is saying, we invite him in. The new place of God's temple is right here. I mean, put your hand right here. It's right here. We're not in the temple. He's in the temple. We are it. This is where he lives. So when we are allowing him to be love, to be who he is, then this is who we are, because we don't have a choice. And it's no longer by our own strength. It's by who he is in us. And this is brought home over and over, but the most important parts is Jesus said, be in me as I am in the Father. And he says, the same things that I do, you will do, only greater. This is like a whole earth-shattering thing, to begin to understand that whatever it is that we have believed that we're supposed to conjure up, we just need to love him and want him with all of our heart, with all of our mind, and with all of our strength. And guess where those three things come from? The power to do that isn't in us, it's in him. All we have to do, I'd like to ask you, Danny, how hard is it for you to drive by the park when there's a car show there? How hard is it to drive by the park when there's an old car show there?
Difficult.
How about a gun show?
Difficult.
Yeah. What are the things that pull you?
Gun show.
Okay.
Yeah, but it would be the same thing. Right.
Okay.
Like a model show or something.
Yeah. What do you think? Is it difficult for us to go to the store? Or to look at places of the cool things that we could put in our house? I'm speaking for myself. I'm glad you're stronger than I am. It's not too difficult for me. As a matter of fact, most of the time God's saying, yoo-hoo, I'm over here. Okay, I'm coming. But there are things that pull us with no problem at all. We love them. They spark us. They get us excited. We're willing to cause difficulty in the home life sometimes to go take care of it, to go do whatever it is that we find is exciting. And I'm trying to tell you, when I hear what God is, do you know anybody like this? If you go back through that again, God's never rude. He's never boastful. He doesn't seek his own way. He's perfectly okay if I say no. Because he won't put the choice. He won't make the choice for me. He gives me the choice. Now, there's often consequences, but they're not attached to him giving them to me. They're natural, logical results of what happens in the world when we bounce up against things on all levels. If I go give Judy a hug, she's going to give me a hug back. Well, unless it's a real bad day, the consequences are both good and bad, and we get to pick the level that we want to be at. We can have mediocre, or we can give our lives and our hearts to God and watch what he does. And getting past myself is often the hardest thing for me to do, because I seem to think that I'm married to me. That whatever I feel is really important, and whatever I think is really important. And it makes me really kind of a bummer. I mean, it makes my life kind of icky, and the mind set on itself gets smaller. A mind set on other things, on other people, on love, gets bigger. We no longer focus in, we focus out. And so it's agape, one of the best descriptions I've ever heard, is all the rest of the other kind of loves. This comes from a man named Mumford. All of the other kind of loves that there are loves with a hook. I'm loving you. I'm loving Nick. Agape love has no hook. It's, I'm loving you. It's open love. There is no expectation for anything to come back. Now, life can cause to where we need to hear him, and we need to ask him, and we need to know what it is that we're supposed to be doing, because sometimes loving is hard. Sometimes loving is very hard. And sometimes we have to endure. God is long-suffering. On the way down here, I was listening to this, I'm stealing things this morning. I was listening to this radio, 99 something. And this guy was saying, we have to stop acting like our teenagers. He says, I think God gave us teenagers so that we can have an understanding of what he feels like. Oh, I don't want this. I'm not wearing that stuff. I don't need to go there. I don't want to go to that church. They talk too much. The constant opinions and whining and separating from the whole. Oh, can't you just hear God as he led the people out of Egypt? 2 million people doing that to him in one fell swoop. I have a lot of respect for Moses. The only thing, he hit the rock twice, but I could think of a whole lot of other things I'd like to hit after. It was God's Spirit through that whole thing inside of Moses. all of the things that he could have done and he didn't. And he kept pleading. He had God's heart. It's kind of cool. So I guess that's where I'm trying to go. If we decide that we want to have that God inside of us, and we decide that we want to get to know him, I'm telling you, I'm just inviting you to do this challenge with me. And let's go find out who he is. Not read things because, oh, I have this information now. Not, like I could almost tell you, I know I can give you the fruits of the Spirit right out of my own head. And most of the love chapter in Corinthians. But I never saw them as God before. I never realized that's his love towards me. Not in a heady way, in a hearty way. And I want to know more of that kind of stuff. I want to know more of the things about him that's going to cause me to step right over self and the graveyard that self creates for me. And keep doing the right thing because I know it's the right thing no matter how bad it hurts. Because he's on the other side of it. It just sort of changes everything. I don't know how to explain it. And for those of you that are doing the hard things and feeling like there's not much rope left, I am not saying die. I'm saying that God is a creator God. He has answers that you don't even know about. And he will intervene. He does. He brings respite. He did it to the children of Israel. They were really, really tough, but he got them out. So, in the 2 weeks, I would like to invite all of us to have studied up a little bit about the word agape. Let's find out who this God of love is. Let's find out all the different ways that agape gets used in the Bible, and just see if we can blow him up, make him a full-size, out of this world picture, and what we find. And I'm praying that we're not going to find fear, because perfect love casts out all fear. Him being who he is removes fear in the first place. I'm hoping what we're going to find is so much excitement that we're like walking in the door going, let me talk first. I want to show you what I found first. That there is such, because that's where I know he wants to bring us. He wants to fill us with the power and the strength that only comes from him. And we can only have that when we want him more and more and more and more. And it's a daily thing. Just keep on growing more and more. It's not a light switch. You don't get to walk out and boom, there we are. So, do we want him? Do we want to know him? Do we want to see what he's like from the Word? Not what he did necessarily, but really who he is, what motivates him. Because a lot of times what we see isn't really what happened. A lot of times there's a whole bunch more. Like, example, when David's son raped his stepsister, and David did nothing about it. I was crushed. I was all tore up. Because then it meant that that particular act was okay in my mind. As I kept reading and time went by, God very carefully led me. Because I still trusted him, it just hurt. He led me to the place where David saw what he had done. And he confessed it openly. I have done this. And I've created this son and the damage in this home and this boy that has to die now. It was like, oh, I see. It was really, really healing for me. Not that there was punishment, that's not the point. Because what I felt inside was, but what about the victim? What about, doesn't anybody care about what happened to them? And he showed me, I care. I care in a big way. I cared enough to let David see just how far reaching that one little act was. It was pretty cool. So go searching for big things with an open heart, because God's going to teach us things that we didn't even know was there. And I'm hoping that you will just come up next to him and say, Lord, this kind of, what is this? Help me with this. Show me what's going on here. Because he does do that. Online, for those of you that are online, I will have a link so that you can find all the scriptures that the Bible has in it on agape. And I have printed off stuff for you guys in here if you want them, or you can go online and pull them up, and it's a website. And it has every place in the Bible, or at least the New Testament, that says agape, uses the word agape. So, guys, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, except for no matter what the feeling is inside, he can undo it all. He can go in and take our reservation away. He can fill us with the same power, the same determination that drove Peter and Paul and all of the disciples. We have the capability to go up against everything because he lives in us. And the time is short, and he really is calling his children to circle around and do the work. Because, like that little story where the truck goes and hits the wall, because nobody listens to the signs that warn them that the bridge is too short, the trucks can't fit. He needs his people warned. He needs the creation, his creation, those created beings that he loves enough to send his son to die for. He needs all of us to know that this ain't all.